the great state of Georgia, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes. Mr. Carter, you're recognized for 5 minutes. The gentleman doesn't respond. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Joyce, for 5 minutes.
So, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we're in a series of votes. Dr. Joyce is actually en route back from the floor back to here.
Well,
So he should be here in about 2 minutes if he walks fast.
Well, we'll proceed. The gentlelady from Delaware, Ms. Blunt Rochester, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to the witnesses and our ranking member, Upton. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory calculated that the offshore wind industry could provide over 2,000 gigawatts of energy a year. That's almost double the amount of energy our country uses annually. Additionally, a recent University of Delaware report estimates that the offshore wind industry has the capacity to generate up to $109 billion of economic development over the next 10 years. Not only does the offshore wind industry have the potential to address the ongoing crisis, but it also has the potential to create good-paying union jobs, quality of health, and a more equitable economy. This February, I introduced H.R. 862, the Climate Action Planning for Ports Act of 2021, which would reduce the impacts of pollution around our nation's ports. As Ms. Barragan mentioned, ports are often adjacent to low-income communities and communities of color, groups that are disproportionately bear the brunt of pollution and climate impacts. And so I do want to follow up a little bit more with Mr. Hardy and Ms. Zeichel. I wanted to come at it from the benefits for the communities, and if we could speak a little bit about that. And also, I wanted to touch on the chairman's comment about diversifying the industry as well. I know the question was asked and the answers were kind of vague, and I would love to hear from a union perspective as well as you, Mr. Hardy and Ms. Zeichel. So I'll turn it to you, Mr. Hardy, if you could just talk about ports, but also about diversifying the industry.
Yes, thank you for your leadership on this important topic. As a company ranked 3 times the world's most sustainable energy company, we share your values. As I said many times, we're trying to build this industry in a sustainable way, and the intersection between port communities and offshore wind presents an opportunity for positive change. As I mentioned just in the answer to the last conversation, we've made a big investment, $11 million investment with Zeem in the Port of Newark, but not just to transition those drayage trucks into electric, but also to create training and certification programs and job opportunities for the local residents of the Newark area and the port communities. Likewise, in Maryland, we just announced a zero-emission operation and maintenance hub where we'll host our CTVs, our crew transport vessels, to service our Skipjack 1 project. And again, we'll be working there to train folks to enter this sector, and we'll be targeting folks from disadvantaged communities. And we've set aside specific funds for attracting and recruiting people into this industry. And we're very committed to trying to make it an equitable transition.
I would love to follow up with you as well as Mr. Strong. I think the issue of affordability, reliability, and equity are all intertwined in this conversation. And Ms. Zeichel, earlier this month, I introduced 2 bipartisan pieces of legislation with Representatives Malinowski and Kinzinger, H.R. 5495, the Building Resilient Supply Chains Act, and H.R. 5492, the Manufacturing Economy and National Security Act. I could speak on and on about what we hope to accomplish with that, but I want to ask you, if we don't swiftly act to promote the domestic production of wind turbines, how will that impact our global competitiveness?
Well, for starters, I mean, I think that a lot of the policies that are currently being discussed are going to help solve for these things, whether that's the manufacturing tax credits or the requirements around domestic content. I think there are a lot of good ideas that are currently out there in the mix, and hopefully before the end of the year, we'll get across the finish line. At the same time, what I think is so important about this opportunity is this is the first, I've been working on climate policy for 2 decades, and this is the first time we've actually been talking about not just an energy transition, but an energy and justice, energy and environmental justice transition. This is something our industry takes very, very seriously. We spend a lot of time one-on-one with our board members, looking at what are potential best practices across the industry rather than just by a company-by-company basis. So I think there's great room for improvement, and it's something we would love to work together on.
I would love to work together with you on that as well, and I thank you, and I yield back 1 second.
The gentleman does yield back. The chair now recognizes